Hello everybody, this is Dr. Rajkumar Deshpande, Director of Neurosurgery at Fortis Hospital, Bannerghatta Road. This is a new series on patient interest and what they do when they reach hospital. The series is called What Matters Most. This is how patients feel when they reach a doctor in a hospital for major surgeries. And for today's surgery, which is a kidney transplant, I have with me Dr. Mohan Keshamurthy, Director of Urology at Fortis Hospitals, Bannerghatta Road. He's a very eminent and well-known surgeon, has done hundreds of kidney transplants, and he will answer the questions for me, which matters most to the patients. The first question is, why does kidney failure happen, Dr. Mohan?
The reason for kidney failure is the reason why we don't live forever. Kidney is a finite organ in its capacity to work. Each kidney has 1,000,000 nephrons. These are filters exactly similar to coffee or tea filter. It filters blood. That which is not wanted by the body is transformed into urine, and then it is sent out through a passage.
Okay.
So now each kidney has 1,000,000 nephrons. There are 2,000,000 nephrons in the body. We need roughly about 800,000 to filter the daily production of waste products and send it out. So God in His wisdom has provided 3 functional kidneys in 2 anatomical kidneys, so that irrespective of how long you live or how long you are allowed to live, you still send the waste products out on a regular basis. For any reason, the number of filters decrease beneath 800,000, the waste products of the body won't be cleared on the same day.
Okay.
And the buildup of these waste products, or creatinine as it is measured in the bloodstream, as a simple biochemical test, constitutes the beginning of renal dysfunction.
Okay.
When the waste products build up to cause dysfunction of the body itself, then we call it as renal failure. The question is, if a cell stops working, why can't the body create a new one? The basis of creation of the kidney is such that each cell can work more, but it can't create another one. It's male in its capacity. It's not a female organ. And hence what happens is, if there are 2 people running a household, 2 brothers, one brother runs away, the other brother has to work twice as hard to see the household gets its basic necessity.
Okay.
Similarly, the kidney cells try to work more, they get tired, and then renal dysfunction, that is inability to clear waste products in a regular fashion, leads to renal failure, which if untreated can cause death.
Okay, as a subsequent question to this, what diseases can cause kidney failure?
In our communities, the single biggest culprit is diabetes. Uncontrolled diabetes, or even diabetes reasonably well controlled for a prolonged period of time, requiring insulin for more than a decade, is a single commonest reason that can lead to renal failure. Besides this, hypertension, congenital issues. The kidney is a complex organ. It's like a premium car. The parts come from all over, and they are assembled in the mother's womb. And because of its complex nature of creation, a lot of mistakes can happen, and hence congenital anomalies is a problem. Infection of both the kidneys is a possibility. Pregnancy related issues like eclampsia with excessive hypertension is a possibility, and there are various less common causes like trauma, like drowning, which can also cause kidney failure. But the one common thread would be diabetes and hypertension, being besides congenital or defects of creation, are the commonest reasons why we find a renal failure.
So it appears that diabetes and hypertension, especially when they're untreated, are the ones which probably lead to kidney failure. Okay. Do you think kidney failure is becoming common nowadays?
Very much so. Three reasons why kidney failure is becoming more common. We are the world's capital for diabetes. South India having more than the northern part of the country, and with increasing diabetes at a younger age, needing insulin earlier, the possibility of renal failure as a consequence of poorly or inadequately controlled diabetes is coming into focus.
Okay.
The second reason obviously is lifestyle changes. We have a more sedentary lifestyle, we have a more indulgent lifestyle, and this also contributes or exaggerates the deleterious effects of both diabetes and
Okay.
hypertension. And the last and the most important part which has brought it into focus is our diagnostic ability. We are now have greater ability to diagnose renal failure early,
Okay.
and also to protect patients with renal failure to survive till an medical answer is found for the problem.
Okay.
So, all these three reasons have contributed to make our renal failure of greater incidence.
Okay. I have another question related to this, and that is, why do some kidney failures recover, and why do some kidney failures does not ever recover?
This is a fabulous question in terms of patients' inability to understand
Okay.
or why some kidneys recover and some don't. The distinction is between what we call as acute kidney injury versus chronic renal failure. What do these terms mean to the common man? So, for example, an infection can cause temporary inability of the filters or the nephrons to work.
Correct.
So, this is the flap, but subsequently, due to correct treatment instituted
The
early
nephrons,
enough,
the kidney starts recovering.
recovering.
Yeah.
And it is in a phase called acute tubular necrosis or
Okay.
suspended animation, or the kidney has gone to sleep, but it is potential to work again at reasonable capacity is still retained in the Indian way of thinking, sattva.
So basically what you're saying is there is a kidney insult, and this insult has temporarily made the kidney not to work, and now it's started to work again.
Yes.
So we call it as a reversible kidney damage.
Absolutely, and
Excellent.
that is acute kidney injury.
Correct. So in some patients though, the insult or the damage to the kidney is irreversible, meaning
Meaning that what happens in those patients, as we call as chronic renal failure, and there's a very important term called end stage renal disease. What is
Okay.
the difference? It doesn't recover, as you said, in some patients.
Okay.
Recurrent insult eventually means the ability to recover goes down. But there is this concept which I told you at the beginning, that the kidney has 2 million nephrons.
correct.
The Indian male possibly is able to filter 100 to 125 ml of blood per minute. We call
Okay.
it glomerular filtration rate.
Okay.
Whereas the Indian average female is able to filter between 80 to 100 ml per minute. Now, till it reaches about 30 ml, although inefficient, the body is still able to clear the
So
waste products.
basically it is working at a reduced pace,
Efficiency,
but is able to manage.
but when it goes below 20 ml per minute,
That's when the problem starts happening.
because the waste products build up in
Correct.
the body, and
Agreed.
that is called end stage renal disease, and some kind of mechanical support in the form of dialysis
Or something like that, yeah.
or a surgical procedure to put in
So
a
that
new
is my
kidney.
next question. So once the patient is diagnosed with a kidney failure and something which may not recover, what are the options for treatment for this kind of patients?
There are two major options.
Okay.
One is a machine to clear the waste products on a daily or alternate day or once in a few days basis. There are two different ways in that. One is to filter using a machine in a fixed location,
Okay.
what we call as a dialysis center. This is hemodialysis,
Basically, you have
a
to
needle is
get
put
the blood out from the vein,
and then
and then
you return it back
purifies within
the
that
machine,
and you get purified blood.
back into
back
the
into the
system.
system.
What
Okay.
the kidney does, the machine does.
Excellent.
Alternatively, you can do peritoneal dialysis. Peritoneum is a bag that contains the intestines, like a gunny sack,
So basically, you're putting a catheter into
the abdomen.
and then you allow the nature to
You put
dialyze.
fluid in,
Yep.
and
Yep.
then it drains out by gravity. The patient himself or herself can do it in
Fair
the
enough.
convenience of their home, as long as they maintain strict asepsis so that
Correct.
they don't get infected because of this catheter. So, one is dialysis, where a machine does the job of the kidney. The other is to put a new kidney in. Again, there are two different ways
So
to do it.
basically, what you're saying is, if the kidney cannot work, you have two options. One is a medical option, the other one is a surgical option where you end up transplanting the kidney.
Correct.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Absolutely.
Wonderful, Dr. Mohan. Now, assuming the patient, after undergoing all the tests, has a requirement for a kidney transplant, who can donate a kidney for this kind of an individual?
Any adult between the ages of 18 and 65 can donate, preferably a relative. We call it living related donation. A emotionally related human being such as the wife or a childhood associate can also donate. These are called emotionally related donors. The third is what we call as patients who are brain dead but are still mechanically circulatory function is maintained by the heart, who will not be able to be revived by medical science.
So there are several options, the way you're explaining to me, available for patients who have a requirement for a kidney transplant, but they have to follow these norms.
Correct.
See, once they follow the norms, I think that there is an option for kidney transplant in such patients.
Correct.
So, since many options are there for patients to get donors to donate the kidney, what happens to the donor's life post the kidney donation?
That's a very interesting question. There are two parts to this answer. First, a donor can only donate if he is absolutely healthy.
Okay.
This is one occasion where an absolutely healthy gentleman or lady visits a hospital to undergo a major procedure for the benefit of loved ones or somebody else's health.
Okay.
So, the rigorous evaluation of the donor is something that every transplant program does to be sure that he is eligible to donate.
So, once the donation happens, it should be understood that it is likely to be very, very safe. Basically, they live a normal life.
Absolutely normal.
Without fear of saying, oh, I may get into trouble.
Exactly.
Amazing. I think that's a wonderful, satisfying way of saying, okay, I'm willing to donate and I'm going to have a normal life.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Now, what happens to the disease donor transplant?
This in the Indian scenario has multiple colors like the rainbow.
Okay.
The first is the religious connotation of whether a person can be dead and alive at the same time. Because you are saying that he is brain dead but he is alive otherwise.
Okay.
So, there is this difficulty for the ordinary person to accept that his loved one from whom we want to take the kidneys to donate to somebody else who needs them is brain dead but actually not dead to be declared as clinically dead.
But you know, Dr. Mohan, the government of India has very clearly specified that patients whose brains are not functioning but other organs are functioning are clinically brain dead, and there is no way of confusing this issue whatsoever.
So,
nowadays.
it's a very clearly delineated clinical fact that brain death is clinically evaluated and the criteria used to declare brain death are inviolable.
Wonderful. So, what is this transplant wait list?
The transplant wait list is basically there are 4 blood groups as we all know, and AB is a universal receiver. He can he or she can receive from A, B or O.
Okay.
O is a universal donor.
Okay.
And based on this blood group of those patients who deserve a kidney, each state creates a wait list for deceased donor transplant.
Okay.
And this is a government initiative in Karnataka. It's called Jivana Sarthakate.
Okay.
It's a computerized list. There are some who get additional points, people who are very young and have reached renal failure, or people who have no access for dialysis. They're called dialysis access cripples.
Okay.
Such patients may jump the queue. Otherwise, this is a queue.
So, basically there is a wait list of patients who are eligible and this is rigorously followed.
Yes.
Okay. So, now for the patient who received the kidney transplant, what is his life or her life after the transplant?
This is a very interesting question. The point here is they get off the machine and they restore possibly 50% more time to indulge in activities that they would have otherwise done but for the renal failure.
So they can probably lead a near normal life. Excellent.
However, they have to take a set of medications to prevent rejection, that is, the body rejecting foreign tissue, number one. Number two, they have to follow a reasonably rigorous lifestyle and diet. And number three, and equally relevant, is they should come for periodic tests to ensure that the immunosuppression is appropriate to their needs. It shouldn't be more, it shouldn't be less. If it is less, there is rejection, and if it is more, they can develop skin cancers or cancers of other organs. So, periodic evaluation by a qualified nephrologist.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Only few centers can do a consistently good kidney transplant. So, what is the reason for that?
This is true throughout the world. It is not just in India. Very few centers are there for kidney transplant. The reason are twofold. One, it is not just a transplant surgeon like me. You need a good nephrologist. You need a good intensive care setup. You need a good anesthetist. You need a good pharmacy, which contains
and a great laboratory.
And a fabulous laboratory to support you. This is part A. Part B is the remuneration of kidney transplant for the hours of work put in and the headache that you get in case the kidney fails, or questions on social or moral or ethical grounds are posed to you. And as we know in this country, there have been multiple reasons. We have been in the newspaper for wrong reasons.
Correct.
Not all of them physician driven, but it has happened.
Correct.
So, the younger urologists or younger vascular surgeons would want not to step into this niche area, because it neither pays well and the possibility of headache are innumerable, and with endoscopy or minimal access surgery coming into focus, you can earn very well in a short period of time. So, you need passion for transplant.
Basically, yes. So, my question is related to that. If there are very few centers which do kidney transplants, then how does one train to be a transplant surgeon like you?
Simple answer is the government of India has not recognized any formal training program in the country for kidney transplant.
So you think there is a big need for that?
There is a huge need for that. It is now done volitionally by urologists who intend to pursue the subspecialty of kidney transplant as one of their areas of expertise. However, in North America, the American Society of Transplant Surgeons, which is now AST, has a recognized syllabus, curriculum and program for transplantation.
So, in future, you expect in India, you will have absolutely well-trained, certified transplant surgeons who are homegrown.
We have homegrown talent, but we don't have uniform criteria to certify them. I would expect in the next 5 years the DNB board to come up with, like
transplant,
as for robotic surgery, for transplant, homegrown criteria to designate who can and how should he be trained to provide safe transplant surgery for the future.
I have one last question to you, Dr. Mohan. This may be a very unusual question. Can you grow kidneys in the lab?
This is what magically man has tried for a long time, and as I said at the beginning, the kidney is like a premium imported car. The parts come from all over in the mother's womb to be assimilated, and as I said again, congenital anomalies, mistakes happen often, and that is what has defeated the human mind, even with the nanocomputing, to create an organ as complex as a kidney which can reliably function. But at some point in the next decade, I would expect, like a mechanical heart, a mechanical kidney, whether it is implantable, wearable or a miniaturized version is everybody's guess. But in the next decade, I would guess, I would hope it is implantable to keep surgeons like me in action, but I would be delighted if it is a wearable one
Okay.
or a mechanical device which can be worn like a watch.
It was wonderful talking to you. You have been very, very elegant and crisp in answering all those questions. This is what I wanted to ask for Dr. Mohan in this episode about what matters most to patients who undergo kidney transplant. I'm very happy he has given excellent answers. I would like to also ask the people who are viewing this to like and subscribe to this, ask questions related to this in the numbers given below or the email given below. And if you have any further topics to discuss on this, please do let us know, and we'll be doing this in many more episodes. Thank you once again for watching.